our next speaker. She's here. She's Fungi Dubé. I'm so excited. And she's going to be talking to us about brand design. Like I said, this is, really, really very similar fields. And I'm really excited to be here. Let me know if you can hear me, Fungi.
I can hear you, Hanifa. How are you?
Oh, great. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you're honoring our invite. I really look forward to having this conversation. So I know that we are really, short on time, and I would just want to kind of get this started. Let me know if you can turn on your camera or share your screen or anything that you need. And I'm also going to be launching this poll. Everybody, please go ahead to respond to that post, just so to help us to understand kind of audience that we are looking at, and if this is very resourceful to you. So over to you, Fungi. So nice to see your face. Hi.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here. So this is just going to be like a casual chat where we're going to be going through some things. Chisa has covered a lot of it, so I may skim over the things that he's mentioned, but I'm just going to compound on what he said.
Okay.
So in brand design, you guys have to give me a thumbs up for my presentation deck because I put so much work into this. So please leave a comment like, hey, it looks so cool. Even if you think it doesn't, just say, hey, it looks cool. Okay.
Okay.
So this is what we're going to be going through. So what is brand design? Just basically going through how to learn brand design and then other things in between. So I'm just going to run through all of this, and I hope that it's nice and apt, and it's something that's going to add value to you if you are looking to get into brand design. So how do we actually define it? So Chisha has been talking about graphic design. Brand design is an extension of graphic design, but it has a particular focus because what we're now looking into is trying to create or like redesign or refresh an identity for a product or service. So it's basically giving that product or service a look, a feel, a vibe, a story, and doing that in such a way that you're able to maintain like brand equity, and you're also appealing to a specific target audience. So when we are now talking as brand designers, like what are we actually doing? We're getting some input, right? So that could be in the form of a brief from a client who says, hey, I have a company and I want to be able to sell fast food out of Lagos, right? So we are now going to start to strategize and research as to how we can give that company or that business or that product, that service, a look and a feel. So there's a lot of strategy. And this is also important to mention that brand designers can be strategists as well, but strategists are not necessarily brand designers. So I just thought that I needed to mention that. So there's strategy, there's research, but then there's also conceptualizing and ideating. So coming up with the idea, like what is the look of this thing going to be like at the end? And brand designers are basically designing targeted solutions. So it's a solution to a creative problem. It ceases to just be work, and this is very important to note, but it's more of a solution to say the output for this should be able to impact the target audience that this product or service is meant to cater to, but also at the same time, it should be visually pleasing to look at. It should be aesthetic, but it's a matter of making sure that form marries function, if that makes sense. So what this could potentially look like, right? And obviously I've referenced Chisa's project here because he's a good friend of mine, and I really love this brand identity project that he did. So basically, bearing in mind the steps that I've been talking about, right? So we're talking about that strategy and research, right? So this was for a fast food outlet out of Lagos, and just coming up with the idea of being able to give it a face, right? So what are the colors going to look like? What's the general vibe and feel of the brand? What is the logo going to look like? What is the packaging going to look like? What is all the other business collateral going to look like? So things like business cards, things like t-shirts, caps, whatever the case is, depending on what the brand needs. This is a part of what constitutes brand design, right? Another element of what this could potentially look like would be so that you also get an appreciation of the visuals that are attached to this thing, is this was a project that I did, and it was basically giving a face to a tea brand, right? So again, it's conceptualizing and ideating to say, what are we going to tell? Like, what is the story behind this? What colors are we incorporating? How do you want people who interact with this product to feel about it at the end of the day? So all of this constitutes what brand design is all about. There's a lot more to say, but we would need like, a lot more time, but I'm just breaking it down so that at least like we have an appreciation of what's going on. So as we move on, how do you actually learn brand design, right? Like I said, Chisa has gone through most of the things or the resources that you need to learn, but I have basically like broken it down into 3 classes, right, of skills that are essential to brand design. So the first one being like your hard, like technical skills, and then you need like your soft emotive skills. And I included this here. It may not constitute a skill or a class of a skill, but you definitely need to be determined and you need to have the willpower. So when we're talking about hard skills, we're talking about, the fundamentals of design. So we need to be able to master graphic design theory. We need to be able to master the software. So when we're talking about graphic design theory, and what I have included here is not even close to fully constituting the full measure of what you need to be able to understand, but basically being able to understand color. Like, how do people feel about this color if I use it for this brand, right? It's very rare that you're going to have like a natural / organic brand that is going to be all black, right? That's going to give off a different vibe. We need to be able to understand balance, like how are all the different elements interacting together? How are we making use of the space, right? Because it has to be something that the eye is pleased to look at. We may not all be designers, we may be aspiring to be designers, but even people who are out there in the world, like when they see a billboard or they see a poster or flyer and something looks funny, without even knowing like design fundamentals, they're like, wait, hold up, that's a little bit weird, right? So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about alignment, like how are all of your elements placed? And we can match this up to hierarchy as well, like making sure that everything is balanced. Like the things that are going in the left corner need to be balanced with things that are going to go up in the right corner, that sort of thing. We're talking about type, because type is something that influences how people perceive a product as well. So obviously, if you see something more elegant, you may associate it with the brand being more luxurious, whereas if you see something more geometric, it could be, like a very corporate, very serious brand, things like that. We're also talking about contrast, right? If my face was the same color as this wall, you would not be able to see me. So that's what we're talking about. But because there's melanin here and, there's contrast in the back, then you can be like, okay, we can definitely tell that there are 2 elements that are within the frame. So that's what we're talking about. The software, you definitely want to make sure that you are zoning in on focusing on one vector-based software, because when it comes to like designing logos and that sort of thing, like this is what we're looking into. So the choice is yours. I am an advocate for Adobe Creative Cloud because of the communication between the different apps. But also if you're starting out, it may not be your best option because Adobe subscription is not cheap. So that is something that you may have to consider, like, what are my other options? Chisa was amazing. He gave like free options, right, that we can try out. But you can also look into, like other options like Affinity Designer or Figma, right? You can still do amazing, amazing vector work inside those apps. The soft skills, right? This is where it gets interesting, because going into brand design is not just about how technically good you are, like behind your screen. You can create the most amazing logo, you can have the most amazing presentation, but also at the same time, because we are talking about getting into this and making a career out of it so that we're actually able to earn from our creative prowess. So it means that we have to be able to develop other skills that allow for us to be able to do this as well. So being able to communicate with people, because you are going to be talking to people in your community, you're going to be hopefully talking to clients in the near future. So you need to be able to articulate your thoughts and your process, and also at the same time market yourself, because you want for your work to be out there and you want for people to see it so that you can start earning from it. I've already spoken on research, very important, as research-based design goes much further. You can never fail with that, because if you've done like due diligence and put in all the work and like done all your competitor analysis and everything like that, then, and you know that the output that I was talking about earlier is going to be something that's very targeted and very specific. We also need to think about being able to, you know, like get on top of it when it comes to like decision making and like this design thinking. Like, and what that is essentially, like in a nutshell, is being able to think about how, you know, colors and shapes and, you know, and type are going to interact, and which ones of those you need to pick so that at the end of the day, the solution that you have is the best solution. It's the most optimized solution for whatever it is that you're working on. And obviously, progress is about determination, it's about effort, it's about consistency. So don't let anyone tell you that you can just wake up and start designing. You really have to be like committed to it. And this is the hard truth. For as long as you put in the work, you will see progress. If you decide that you're not going to put in the work, then that's going to be a different story. So the thing about it is that the learning curve is not linear at all. I think that as I was starting this, it was probably a misconception where I thought that, hey, like if I just learn, right, which is amazing, don't get me wrong, and I just start like putting my work out there, surely like I'm just going to see like money like dropping into my bank account and everyone's just going to be like, oh my gosh, like we want to work with you. That's not what happens at all. There were many, many, many months where I was like, I don't even know if I should be doing this. Like, what do I need to like do next and that sort of thing. So you should be very pragmatic and you should be very realistic about story time. I am actually not a designer by profession. I am now, but I'm a scientist by training. So I graduated at 22 years old with a double major in science. And this was in December of 2014. So at the start of 2015, I was highly frustrated. I was trying to look for a job everywhere and I couldn't find it. And I was waking up every single morning to like rejection emails. And it was just the most like dejecting time of my life. So I always had creative inclinations and I decided that I needed to teach myself a new skill. So because I feel like everyone who's self-taught has probably gone through that channel. So I was on that channel every single day for about 5 months, following like 20-minute tutorials, and it would take me like 4 hours because like the functions that he was pressing, like I was doing the same thing, but I was like, why is our output different? Like, let's talk about this. What's going on? But that was my learning curve. And in May of the same year, I eventually did land a job. So I worked in education for 6 years, but I had turned design into a side hustle at that point. So I was working my day job and I was taking meetings in my car during lunch and finishing design jobs in my car during lunch. But whose design jobs was I finishing? My family's, right? Because I didn't have like any clients or anything like that. I was just like offering myself. Someone would be like, hey, like there's a birthday coming up or there's a graduation coming up. I'm like, yes, I'm designing something, right? So this is my side hustle, right? This is what I'm doing, but I'm doing it during office hours, right? In my spare time. And when I would come back home as well, like I would burn the midnight oil, like just trying to learn new techniques and everything like that. Up until I actually got my first corporate gig through someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew someone, right? And I was so scared. I was like, what is going on here? Like, is this me? Like, is this really me? So I did it. And I'll tell you, I designed a logo and a letterhead for this company for $20, right? I'm not entirely sure what the equivalent is in Naira, but I can tell you that it's not a lot for the amount of work that goes into it. But I was overjoyed and like, I was like, yes, like this is it. So that gave me the confidence boost that I needed because I was like, hey, people can actually start paying me for my services, right? So I continued to design for the next 4 years. And then eventually in 2019, I took a very bold step. I was like, I'm going to register my creative brand as a company here in Zim. I don't know what that's going to mean. I don't know if I'm even going to get like clients who are going to pay me like that. But, you know, let's just get into it and see what happens. End of last year, I decided to leave my job. And I've been a full-time creative solopreneur since. So this is just to show you that the journey really is not linear, right? We're going to go through so many like dips and that sort of thing, but we just need to make sure that we stay focused if it's something that we're passionate about and we stick to it. So now this brings me to the part where we can talk about showcasing your work, because it's one thing to learn, right? But how are people actually going to see that you do what you do if they have no proof of it, if there's no paper trail that they can follow to say, hey, Fungi is actually a brand designer, but how do we know that? A portfolio becomes extremely important. And here's my advice: fake it till you make it, right? Because the thing is, when you're starting out, you're likely not going to have any clients. You're probably going to be like me, designing like a birthday invite for my 6-year-old cousin, but being very happy doing it, right? But if you do want to be able to put yourself in a position whereby you actually like, start having eyes on your work, then come up with passion projects, right? Experiment with what you've been learning, right? Because more passion projects are going to take you very, 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 very far. If I look back and, just in my career and everything, I experienced some of my best clients have come up from projects that I've made up in my head. I gave myself a brief. I was like, okay, this is the product, this is the target audience, these are the deliverables. So there has to be a logo, there has to be colors, there has to be some form of like font or like typography pairings, there has to be packaging, there has to be this. And from there, I've had people reach out to me for jobs, yet it was something that I made up completely in my head. So this becomes like super important, because even if you're then looking into applying for jobs with agencies, or you want to just, like, again, go the independent route and like work for you. So don't stress about it being paid work. Just do the work and put it out there, and you'll be shocked as to what can actually happen. So, like I said, I was a science major, and I believe that the best like recipe for like creativity is experimentation. So dip your hands like in several things. Right? Don't limit yourself as to what it is that you would want to do when you're starting out, because you can only discover, right, what you want to do after you've been exposed to a lot more. So I would say I started out as a generalist, right? So I was like a general graphic designer. I did anything and everything. I would design flyers, business cards, t-shirts, album art, all of that. Up until, from just that experimentation process, like I looked into it, I was like, you know what, this work, yeah, it's great work, but it's not work that inspires me. And this is then what led me to actually, like channel my energy into brand design. And I've been much happier doing that. So the model really would be like a funnel, right? Where you want to start out, right, by just putting everything in there, right? Experimenting, staying curious. But over time, it's probably going to, become super individualized, because you discover, hey, this thing that I thought was interesting is actually not that interesting. And that's okay, right? Because it's part of the journey. I would rather focus on this particular thing that makes me happy. But also at the same time, if you want to keep it all up here, that's okay too, right? Because it's very subjective and it's your own personal decision. So this brings us to the question, can you make some money from brand design? And the answer is yes, you can. Okay, you can definitely make really good money from brand design. What I really appreciate about being in 2021, right? And even in the past, I want to say probably in the past 5 years, is that we've done away with this stigma where people are like, oh, you're creative? Oh, you must be a starving artist, right? And I understand why that's a thing, because growing up, like we felt like we had to take on the more traditional roles, right? So things that were safe, engineering, safe, accounting, medicine, law, safe. This is not to discourage you if this is what you would still want to do, right? But this is also to empower you if you want to pursue a creative career, because it is actually very lucrative for as long as you're able to position yourself appropriately. We're seeing people buying houses, right, from NFTs. Madness, okay? But that's all creative art that's making them money, right? But they've now known where to position themselves so that they're actually in a place whereby they can actually earn from their gifting. And we should all be like that. So if anything, this is an encouragement to say, hey, you can definitely make good money, right? The idea of positioning yourself and like making sure that you put yourself in a space where you can do that is a whole nother topic in itself, but you can definitely make good money. So what I've now compiled is a little checklist for you. So if you're thinking, hey, I want to get into brand design, what do you need to think about? First of all, train your eyes. And what I mean by that is that we are all consumers of a lot of content, right, in general, but you want to be able to engage with good design. So it means that the pages that you're following, the content, the design content that you're interacting with, it has to be something that actually inspires you. It has to be something good, right? And it has to be something that motivates you to be able to create or define your own style or whatever the case is. And this also allows you to be able to draw inspiration from several sources. The second thing is your time. There's no way that you can say, hey, and I'm being real with you, there's no way you can say, hey, I want to be able to have clients invest in me if you're not investing in yourself. So it means that you invest the time, right, to learn, to upskill, right? So that at least when you're in that place whereby, you know, people are like, hey, I would like to work with you for your services, they know that they're getting the highest value proposition because you're also working on yourself. The third thing, practice. There's no way you can be like, hey, you know, summer body, here we come, and you're sitting at home, right? That's not going to happen. You've got to go out, you've got to go run, you've got to go walk, you've got to go to the gym, whatever the case is. So as much as you're training that, you've also got to train your design brain, right? And it's like able to process and to think in such a way that, you know, when you're actually in there, in the trenches, in the design trenches, you are absolutely providing the best creative solutions. The fourth thing is to ask for feedback. And it can be like very scary for a lot of us, especially when we're starting. I know that this is something that I lacked personally because I didn't actually know that you could reach out to people, right? I was just like, oh, you know, like everyone's just going about their day. Like, I don't want to stress them out by saying, hi, like I follow you. And I was just wondering, like, could you help me with A, B, C, and D? But what I've actually noticed, and I can confidently say this for myself if you'd like to reach out to me, is that everyone's kind of nice. So, you know, if things are like super hectic, they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, like you're wasting my time, but they're going to be like, oh, is it okay if I get back to you like here and there? But like, thank you so much for reaching out to me. So I know it's so scary, but like, do you find, you know, like designers that you can reach out to or communities that you can join so that you're not walking the journey alone? There's some questions that, you know, like the internet is not going to answer, but someone who's been in the field will have that response for you. The fifth thing, show your work. Chisa was talking about how he's a self-proclaimed president of the Show Your Work Club. And I also advocate for this, regardless of where you're at, right? And I'm going to tie this in with the sixth point to say, embrace the journey. So we all start somewhere. And what tends to happen is that when we're starting out, there's like this like fear of, you know, people saying that your work is not good enough, or you feeling like you're not good enough, or you seeing some work that someone else is doing, and you're like, oh gosh, like I'm wasting my time. Like, what? Look at what they're doing and look at what I've done. What you need to remember is that even the experts were beginners at some point, right? So in their like hard drives, they've got a folder that's got a folder in it, that's got another folder in it of things that they were doing when they started out. And I know I have this, and I look at it and I cringe a little, but I'm also super proud of it because I'm like, that is the best that I could do at the stage that I was at. So embrace the journey, and with time, you will definitely grow and you will evolve. So this brings me to the very end of my presentation. And I'm just going to add on to some of the resources that Chisa was talking about by Alina Wheeler. I want to talk about Identity Design and Logo Design Love by David Airy. Book of Branding, absolutely amazing book. Branding in 5.5 Steps. The Design of Everyday Things, right? All of these books are going to help you with technical aspects, are going to run you through the process, but are also going to help you with design thinking. So being able to, you know, open up your mind as to how to fully like come up with creative solutions that work and are aesthetically pleasing at the end of the day. We want to look at YouTube because that's a free resource, right? So Chisa mentioned Tasty Tuts. I vow by Tasty Tuts. I am a graduate of Tasty Tuts, absolutely love it. Satori Graphics, Yes, I'm a Designer, Pix and Perfect, Brandon Shepherd. he has tutorials on Photoshop, on Illustrator, on Adobe InDesign, and there are full playlists that are easy to follow. So that would be super, super helpful for someone starting out. I would also recommend that you watch the series Building a Brand by The Future on YouTube, only because this is specifically targeted toward brand design. Like I was saying, brand design is the ability to be able to tell a story through creative solutions. So they take you from the very start of them working with this couple who have a brewery, and how they conceptualize logos and how they come up with the packaging and everything like that. It's super expensive. And the best part is that all of that knowledge is free. So that's a good place to start. Other design shows that I'll recommend is Abstract. It's a Netflix series, but you can also find it on YouTube. And it showcases different fields of design. So things like there's graphic design, there's interior design. But why I recommend this is because I think that brand design is just not, like logos and colors and packaging. Being able to consume other types of design content, like allow for you to be able to think wider, right? So I even recommend, even for inspiration, like going outside, like just seeing what's outside, or interacting with other people's art, or going to galleries, or things like that, because it allows for you to be able to expand your mind when it comes to the whole design field. So that would be it from me. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. But I did want to say that if you are starting out and you feel like you have absolutely no one to talk to and you're so confused, and all of this design jargon and stuff is just extremely overwhelming, like, you're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm very happy to help you as best as I can. And I just wanted to thank Hanifa and Ingressive for Good for inviting me. And I hope that there's value in what I've presented to you.
Absolutely. Let's start with your beautiful designs. Oh my God, it looks so cool. Attractive. I mean, yeah, without you even saying that we should say they're beautiful, they do look.
Did you see did you see the Ingressive for Good color palette? I was like, I've got to like match that energy.
So, I mean, I think our brand designer would be, kind of excited about that. Like, yeah, that was really great. Thank you so much for honoring our invite, and then, kind of giving us a lot of all this value. We really, really appreciate it. And I can see a lot of people are in the chat box talking about this. Yes, this is really great. So I think we do not necessarily have questions, but a lot of people want access to the presentation, the resources. And like I said, we're going to be working together with you to kind of build out the resources, and then I give access to the presentation. And the video will be put up on YouTube. So if you put your eyes out on our emails, we're going to send them out. And once again, thank you so much, Funky. Like, I doff my hat. Yeah, we did run a poll, and I'm going to be going through that now. And the question is, do you have an idea what design is? And we have 40% said yes, 24% said no, 6% said not sure, and 31% said a little bit. So I think we did do great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to be ending this now.